What is your first memory of the Seattle Seven?
My first memory was Garth Stein telling me, he's in my writers group, and he was telling me all about this organization that he'd formed with Jenny Shortridge and 5 other authors, and it sounded very intriguing.
Jenny Shortridge was sort of the ringleader of getting people together to say, hey, I didn't know many of the people of the original 7. I met them for the first time. Stevie Kalos, Broken for You was out and doing quite well, and so she was there, and Randy Sue Coburn and Heather Barbieri, and so there's a group of people, and then suddenly we were like, we should expand this. There are more people out there who would identify with us.
I think by the time they had about 11 people, Garth turned to me and said, "Would you like to be one of the Seattle 7?" And I was like, "Sure." It's like one of the things is I'm a big celebrity lover, and I was like, oh, I get to meet some of these cool authors, like Maria Semple and Erica Baumeister and Kip Baki and Carol Casella. They were all part of it. Mary Guterson was another one of the original.
And I'd been doing some events where I was not doing a bookstore-centric event, where I would go to, say, Phoenix and do a thing with Changing Hands Books, but we would partner with a local animal rescue society. And I was talking to everybody at one of our early gatherings, and I said, we can do this. So let's just go out and sell some books and donate some proceeds.
What were your kind of hopes for it at first? What did you hope to get from it, aside from being able to wine with some other writers?
Altruism is part of it, a big part of it, but another part is just helping your friends, and also having your friends help you, and which is one of the reasons I as much as possible, I try and go to other people's book signings, because just to support them. I mean, we've all been through author hell, where you go to a bookstore and they've got 50 chairs set up and no one is there except one person reading a self-help book.
Well, first it started out just as a kind of a social networking to support group of like-minded people. We like to say people who can complain about the publishing world and not take criticism from the civilians. So in the early days, we did everything as a pass-through. We didn't see any money. We would partner always with another literary group. When we invented the novel live, that's when everything changed. What happened was there was a thing called Arts Crush at the time. They invited us to say, what is the literary group going to do? Can you contribute? So I, kind of thinking out loud in front of these people, said, well, what if we did a marathon read? We read Joyce's Ulysses 24 hours a day. Okay. And people are like, yeah, I don't know. And so I think for another minute, I'm like, I got it. Why don't we do a marathon writing session? We're gonna write a book in 6 days. A novel. We're going to write a novel in 6 days. And everyone's like, oh. And I looked over at Jenny and she was like, and I was like, we can do this. And then it took a lot of coordination. Hugo House got behind it right away. They offered up their space in the cabaret in the old Hugo House. And then I started calling writers and saying, you're in. And some said, are you crazy? No. And some said, I'm in. And so we had, Susan Wiggs, of course. We had Eric Larson. We had some really terrific writers. We had some great poets, Ed Skoog. We had Karen Finney-Frock. We had just and everyone was writing in their own style. And it was bizarre and weird, invigorating. And we raised a ton of money for nonprofits, man.
The whole thing was great because I came in practically every day, and just to check out and just to see the buzz there and to see what was going on was so fascinating. And one of the biggest honors for me was that Nancy Pearl auctioned off the rights to have somebody name the person who would be murdered by me in my chapter. So I was like, this is so cool. So when it came my turn, which of course that's when it's all up to me, everyone knew I had to kill somebody, and being a thriller author, you have to build it up, So I'm building and building all the suspense, and it got to be about, everybody had 2 hours, and it got to be about 15 minutes left. I still hadn't killed the guy. And so it was like the Roman Colosseum. They were like, kill him, kill him, kill him. And they're chanting this while I'm up there typing, and finally I did kill him. So that was one of the most exciting parts about it.
What is your fondest or most sort of profound memories from that time with the Seattle Seven?
Right Here, Right Now, which is our annual
teaching
writing
kind
thing.
of,
Yeah, but it's not just teaching. It is by the didactic method. It is teaching by participation, and so writers are writing alongside of established writers are writing alongside of the participants, and the emphasis is really on generating, not on debating or mulling over or workshopping. Right.
Yeah.
And what the people's feedback who participated in that over the years, we did it 10 times. And now Hugo House has taken it over and they're continuing it on. Yeah, every January. And what's great is the people who participate in that feel genuinely moved and touched by the accessibility of writers who they would usually think of as inaccessible.
I run into people who say, you really helped me.
From like the right here,
right now.
Yeah.
You told me to do such and such, and I did it. And I know a few people who've gotten published that I met at Right Here, Right Now. You have 15 to 20-minute sessions with an author, one-on-one, and they could have you read part of what they're written, or they can tell you about it and you can give them feedback. A lot of people who are doing like memoirs, they were amazed that it wasn't like, I was born in such and such. I'm like, start out with an exciting moment in your life. And then, as a teacher, I'm sure you heard this. Just, it doesn't take much. And, people are like, oh yeah. You forget, it sounds so, but you forget that as an author, you do kind of know things that other people, you think everybody else knows it, and they don't.
No.
They don't. It's like, it's amazing.
What surprised you the most when you formed this organization that you wouldn't have expected?
I guess how much work it was is one thing, because we were all, until the end, the last couple of years, we actually had a staff member. But before that, it was all, roll up your sleeves and, we're going to put on a show. And there was something really invigorating and youthful about that. And we did do some wacky shows too. We did these up late reading things and Authors Gone Wild, which were like a variety shows. We had so much fun with that kind of stuff. And that's what was the good surprise, is how much fun we could have.
Yeah.
Just doing something goofy with, let's get some duct tape and do it.
I think the surprise is that sometimes you do meet people and you don't realize that this person who's so down to earth is a hot shot. It's like, I was having drinks with Kristen Hanna, and it's like, I was like, had a great time, and a week later I'm in an airport and I'm like, I didn't know she was like number 3 on the New York Times best-selling list, and so you're like you're constantly getting surprised by people who aren't tooting their own horn, and instead they're working to help other people, which is really cool.
So Seattle 7 must go the way of all flesh, and so somewhere out there's other writers coming along the pipeline. They might want to gather together, the next generation, form their own writing group. What advice would you give them who are going to start their own writing group?
Stick together. Check your egos at the door, stick together, and meet at least once a month and figure out what your mission is and have a clear mission, because that's what the Seattle 7 did. It was always about promoting literacy in the Pacific Northwest and doing some good.
The important thing of anything like this is a sense of community, and so you've got to find out where to look for it and then how to nurture it. And I think that we can control one person, right? Who we get to get into a book theme of the day. You can't sit back and wait for someone to knock on your door. Go out and knock on other people's doors. And Andy Warhol's mother said, if you want to make friends, ask them home for tea. So you got to go ask people over for tea, and then out of that, you get the vibe pretty quick, and then form it up and come up with something. There's no end for need of people who are literate and able to teach literacy and are willing to do so. Tons of volunteer opportunities. You could create something on your own, or you can join in with somebody else who's already doing something great. There's literally dozens of organizations just in the Seattle area who would love to have you And so you just have to go knock on the doors and don't wait for someone to come find you.